Business Scene.
Hey everyone, it's Brittany Harlow with VNN here for another episode of The Business Scene here on the Tulsa Scene podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, The Tulsa Scene, and also our YouTube channel. Lots of ways for you to connect with us on Facebook, all kinds of social media. We're really excited about our episode today. We're going to be talking about nonprofits and particularly speaking with one executive director in particular of a local nonprofit, Michael Shafer. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Brittany, thank you so much for having me.
So Michael is with G6 Allies, and I honestly had not heard about this nonprofit until recently. And then when I started looking into it, I became really intrigued, not just because of what you do and what you offer, but because it just seemed like such a great idea and just one of those things that you really don't think about, probably like someone like I wouldn't think about, and that it's just like you saw a need and now you're like answering that need. And so I want you to explain it because you obviously are going to do a better job than I am. What exactly is G6 Allies and what do you guys offer?
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about that a little bit, and because it is a big need and it's definitely a gap that we want to stand in and try and fill. G6 Allies, we started it in 2018. I have been a pastor for a long time. I preached my first sermon in 1996, I think, so like 25 years ago, and have been in virtually every pastoral ministry role that you can imagine, whether it was on staff at a large mega church or whether it was a church planner, lead pastor, nonprofit sectors, parachurch, all of that. And I've known a lot of pastors and I've been with a lot of pastors and experienced a lot of the same things that they have. And about 2 years ago, my wife and I kind of came to the realization that one of the biggest struggles in the local church, because we love local church bodies of all different shapes and sizes and flavors, is that the leadership is not getting the healthy perspective and getting the treatment that they need. And you can look at, Barna has done some terrific research on that. And, we know that almost half of pastors are at a high relational risk, most of them with their marriage or with their kids even. A third of pastoral kids that are grown up are no longer in the church. And something like 7 to 10% don't even identify as Christians anymore. And so pastors' kids are leaving the church. 1 in 5 pastors struggle with some kind of addiction. Usually it's pornography, but sometimes it's alcohol or drug abuse or something else. Half of pastors are depressed. Like the vocation of being a pastor is in trouble and it's not healthy. And if we want to have healthy churches, we need to have healthy pastors leading those churches. And in personal experience and all the pastors that I know that I've worked with around the country, we spend ourselves day in and day out on behalf of our people, right? We're there to shepherd our people. We love our people. We work endless hours to do that. And we like to carry their burdens as part of our calling. But I think what has led us to where we are is the fact that there's not anyone there to carry the burden of the burden carriers. The pastor needs someone to come alongside them and support them and hold up their arms and say, hey, you got this. You're going to make it. We want to be encouraging to you and help you in that way, or a safe place to vent. Many pastors, everybody has to vent somehow, right? We get emotional, we get drained, we get stressed, and there's just no safe place for pastors to go with that. And so we wanted to start a ministry that did exactly that. And as we were thinking about how we do that, there was one Bible verse that came to mind, and that was Galatians 6:2. Which says to carry one another's burdens, and in this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. And so G6 comes from Galatians 6. That's where we get the name from. And then the allies part of it, everybody needs an ally. Everybody needs somebody in their corner who's fighting for them, who understands where they're at and where they're coming from. And so that's our mission, and that's our goal, is to help pastors who are lonely and overwhelmed and exhausted and feel like ministry is destroying them. We want to jump into their corner and help them and serve them with worthwhile tools, a safe place to go, all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of the mission and the purpose behind what we do.
That is a great idea. And like I had mentioned, a lot of people obviously, might not perceive that need and might not obviously you were on the inside, you understood how much of a need that was. But obviously, people going to church, everyone has their own problems, the pastor is the leader that kind of is helping them. But you're right. It's kind of hard to forget that pastors are real people with their own.
Pastors are people too. Yes.
And so kind of talking about the nonprofit aspect of it, I was wondering, is this the first nonprofit that you have started, and how has that process been for kind of like people who aren't familiar with the process of starting or running a nonprofit?
Yeah, so this is the first nonprofit that I've started. My wife and I have started some side businesses along the way, but this is the first nonprofit I've started. But I've only ever worked in a nonprofit, so very familiar with that kind of environment, whether it was a church or a parachurch type of an organization. But so I'm familiar with that whole side of things, and we even considered starting G6 just as a for-profit business and selling, coaching services and online courses and all that kind of stuff, which we do offer those things. But we really felt like we wanted to take it in the nonprofit direction, in part because of the financial state of pastors. Most pastors are on the low end of the income. They don't make a lot of money. And so trying to offer them the help that they need and oftentimes are a little hesitant to ask for, while also asking them for money, is not a real good business model. And so we knew that in order for this type of ministry to work, it was going to have to be sustained by others outside of the pastoral profession who see this need and want to help it and want to support it and say, hey, I'll give to that cause and to help you provide this service. So we provide that service free to pastors all over the country and helping them in whatever, thing that they're facing. But so that's why we wanted to go the nonprofit route. And it was an interesting experience. I always love to learn new things. And so learning how to start a nonprofit was interesting. We enlisted a company that helps with that kind of stuff. And so they helped us fill out all the paperwork and do those kinds of things. I was very fortunate to, as I was setting up the board of directors and asking people to serve in that capacity, one of the people that I asked to serve on that is a CPA. And so having somebody with an accountant / tax background to come in and speak into how we're doing some of that and how we're structuring it has been a huge win. And he has really helped carry the burden for us in that respect, which has been fantastic to have. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun establishing that and getting that set up. And so went through the whole process with the IRS, and that took months and months and months. And that's one of the, for somebody who likes to start things and kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, and you want to be a go-getter and go get stuff, that doesn't happen with the IRS. It takes time. You can't just like send off something and the next day you get a response from them. I mean, it's months of paperwork and processing for all the stuff that they have to do. So that was probably the hardest part for me, was the sitting and waiting on getting those approvals and all that kind of stuff.
Now, you had mentioned that you had kind of enlisted someone to help you starting up that nonprofit. Was that a local person in the area? I hate to put you on the spot, but
no, it was. He lives in my neighborhood. I've known him for several years, and we had become really good friends, and families got together all the time. And so he was part of the vision development of this entire thing. As we talked with him about, hey, this is what we think we want to do. You got any insights? And so that was really helpful.
I didn't know that
so,
existed, really. That makes sense that if there's people like you that are developing nonprofits, organizations to fulfill a need, and then you're also at the same time, leaning on people who already fulfill a need that you are needing. So it sounds silly, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of work reaching out to resources, and people think of starting a nonprofit that it's like by themselves, but in reality, it's kind of pulling, and it's a team, just like
and it has to be. If we wanted to just do it as a for-profit business, I could have just created it as an LLC, and my wife and I just run it, and that would be the end of it. But as a nonprofit, you're required by law to have a board of directors that make up that. And I don't own G6 Allies. It is its own entity operated by a board of directors, and it cannot be a majority of family members. So I can't have me, my wife, and my accountant friend as the only ones on this board, right? Because that doesn't fly with the IRS. And so we went through that whole process, and my advice to anyone who's looking to start a nonprofit would be select your board members intentionally and carefully. Pick people for your board that have a skill set that your organization needs. And so I knew we would need someone with that kind of accounting background to help with all of that side of things. And so I was intentional to ask him about it based on the work that we do and the counseling we do with pastors. I wanted to make sure that we had licensed counselors on the board so that they could speak into any issues that came up. We have pastors on that board, and we have people who are not in any of those three professions, who are just different in different sectors throughout the world, but they love the local church. They love pastors. They want to support what they're doing. So we have a pretty broad perspective. So when we come to our meetings and we're discussing, hey, what if we do this, or this is the issue we're facing, we get a good, well-balanced response to it. And so, all of us is better than one or two of us, right? And so I like to say that none of us is as smart as all of us. And so together, all of us together can really accomplish some cool stuff.
Cool. Well, this is typically, those are like two super packed questions, and there's a lot to digest there, but obviously lots of good information. Typically at this point in the podcast, I'd say, open it up to you to kind of, for ways that people can get in contact with you. But I know that, even us just asking, those two loaded questions, there might have been something, that we didn't mention about your mission or about, the business side of it. Is there anything, that is speaking to you to share with everyone about your work right now?
Well, so we work with pastors all over the country. We're not just, we're based in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, but a lot of the work we do, we have pastors that we connect with in Georgia, North Carolina, Washington State, Texas, North Dakota, Illinois. We are all over the place working with pastors, which is really, really cool to see. And so we love getting to do that part of it. And part of what the pulse that we're gathering as we talk to pastors all over the country, because pastors are facing different challenges in Texas than they are in California, right? Especially with the pandemic, and can the churches open, can they not? And so pastors are facing different struggles. So that's been an interesting dynamic as we talk with pastors. But one of the things that we're seeing the need for, pastors are hungry for personal growth. They want to grow personally, but they spend all their time on other people, and they need something or someone there to say, hey, I don't want to waste my time reading terrible books, or I don't want to spend the money and buy this and then it not be worth it, or I don't want to sign up for this online course and spend hundreds of dollars for it and it not really be what I need. And so to that end, some of what we are working on now is creating some resources that are aimed at answering those challenges. Personal growth we've created what we call GrowBox. It's a subscription-based personal growth, self-care subscription where we mail you things in the mail based on a survey that you take and identify exactly what area you want to grow in. We curate some resources for you, which is really cool. And mail it to you. And so you get a little Christmas type box in the mail every so often with new resources for you to learn from. We are just about to launch G6 University, which is a series of online masterclasses for life topics, for ministry, for all kinds of things. And these things work for pastors as well as non-pastors, for anybody who wants to learn in these areas. We're excited to share this stuff with you. And so my encouragement would be, if you're looking for something in that realm, check that out. And by purchasing one of those types of things, you're helping to fund and support the work that we're doing with pastors all across the country.
Love it. Wow. You guys are busy.
Very busy. Yes.
Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. So the last, and it's kind of a perfect segue. What's the best way to get in touch with you if people, pastors or not, want to start tapping into those resources that you guys are on?
Obviously all of the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, we're on all of those. But G6allies.com, G6allies.com. And if you want to contact us directly, email is just hello@g6allies.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I am so thankful for the opportunity to speak with you and hear about these awesome resources, not just from what you're doing specifically, but speaking to starting a nonprofit and kind of really touching on what all goes into that. And really just, it's kind of, it's really great advice for just, you guys just seem to be seeing needs that need to be met and creating new ways to meet those needs. And that's just really ingenious from a helpful perspective, but also for a business perspective. So I'm like very, it's a super loaded episode, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. So everyone listening, of course, or watching, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to get plugged into what we're doing here on the business scene. As I mentioned before, subscribe the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can look at all the segments. And one last time, thank you so much, Michael, for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot.
Perfect. Me too. That's why we love doing this. Well, we'll catch you guys next time here at the Business Scene, your source for all things connected to the Tulsa business scene.
Know someone or a local business you think should be featured on the Tulsa Scene podcast? Head to www.thetulsascene.com and let us know today.